This episode's guest is someone I met back in 2018 when I first started learning isiXhosa in earnest. Philip was then my housemate in a rural Eastern Cape village for a brief 3-month period, and at that time he graciously gifted me with a isiXhosa dictionary, which I still have today. In this episode, I learned the background to his own learning of isiXhosa and what has happened in the years since he began learning in earnest. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Please give feedback in the comments section and share it with anyone who you think might want to hear Philip's story. Cheers. We've obviously just been chatting, but thanks for being willing to speak through your story of learning Xhosa. Yeah, so maybe just to start with a brief bio. Where are you from? Who are you?
Right, so my name is Philippus Johannes Jonker. I'm a proper Afrikaans boekie. So my secondary language, English, to start out with. And I grew up in Bonnievale, which is a town in Western Cape, Wynlands area. So I grew up there on a farm, predominantly Afrikaans in those areas. I don't even think there was any English speaker around there. Yeah, so after went to school there, and stayed with my parents more, like school upbringing, went to the varsity. And I think it was around varsity time that I started getting an interest in Xhosa. Around my second year is where I picked up a self-learning Xhosa book from my parents, as I was actually in the farm. Don't actually even know what it was doing there. Or I think maybe they also attempted, I don't know.
Can you remember which book this was?
Yeah, it was the Lumco self-instruction manual. It's the edition I had was like this bright orangey color.
Okay.
And there was a friend I had in varsity in my second year, and he was also interested in learning Xhosa. I think his parents spoke a little bit of Xhosa. So the two of us started like reading books, just any opportunity or any little bit of information you can get. If it was a conversation with a Xhosa friend, we'd start like writing things down and revising to get time. It was like a side thing, I would say. I never had formal classes or anything like that.
Okay. So that's kind of the genesis then. It was an interest in your second year.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you could delve a bit deeper into that, I'm curious why. What was it that you think that was interesting at that point in time? What was it about second year and not first year?
So I don't think maybe it's so specifically linked to my second year more than I think where I grew up, there was no Xhosa people in my school. Maybe like a handful, predominantly white Afrikaans and colored Afrikaans communities that were grouped together in our school. And I think for me, it was always for me important to try and bridge the gap between our two cultures, or the two cultures that we had. And I think, and for me, it has a, how can I say it, a religious or the way I grew up, and in terms of my belief, where I feel like God created all human beings and equal. I think that was a big motivating factor for me to say that, both white Afrikaans and colored Afrikaans people, although they are different, they're still equal. And for that reason, I would like to understand the other culture better. I would like to treat them the same way. Where I think in the areas we grew up in, there was a lot of division. You can feel sometimes the tension if people are using like bad words towards another culture. I never enjoyed that. I never felt this proper, the right way. I think maybe that's sort of where I started getting an interest in, okay, we have different cultures in our country or in our town. Let's bridge, I also had the desire to bridge, the gap in between. So I think maybe that's a big part of why, because it's not that I can't really think of many other reasons. I don't have a specific friend or specific other goal. Then no, I think this can really help in reconciling with other cultures.
Interesting.
So I think,
and so I'm curious, did that come from your parents as well? Or would you say it was something that you just in your engagement with faith and thinking through your interactions with people, that you decided that it's important and it's a way to reconcile or build bridges? Or would you say that there were any people within your home environment or your community who kind of modeled this for you or encouraged it?
Yeah, I think what I found as I grew older was I found that you sometimes you can think that you're the one who started something, but when you look in your past, you can see sometimes, oh, my grandfather or my grandmother was this type of person, or did this and did that, and it's sort of sometimes things are actually passed down to you in some way or another. So no, just why I'm mentioning that is because when I heard stories about my grandmother, I didn't know her very well because she passed away when we were still like primary school.
Hmm.
I know she would usually, they would tell the story with when she would drive her car down the street, she would pick up people who needed a lift, which was very odd at the time. I mean, she lived back in the war era, and she had no problem with picking up anyone on the street and giving them a lift to their place where they had to be. So I think, I think that's sort of something that's maybe in our family, I guess, that doesn't have like too much of a like problem with people from other races or.
Okay, interesting.
So yeah,
And
but in my parents' side, I don't remember like there was no. They wanted us. I think they actually wanted us to learn Xhosa on some point. They
okay.
actually employed a nanny who spoke Xhosa. I forgot to mention myself.
Oh, this is quite interesting. Yeah. And
But that never went to Xhosa.
so it never went to? Can you say again?
Yeah, they didn't succeed much.
Can you tell why? What was the reason? 'Cause that's a story I often hear, is that if there was a nanny who was employed almost with the intentions of the children acquiring Xhosa or another African language, for whatever reason it doesn't work out. So what happened in your case?
I think the nanny wasn't. I don't know. I think when I spoke to them about it, they said that the nanny was never really maybe enthusiastic about it.
Hmm.
Well, she didn't drive it as well as they hoped for. They even offered a raise in salary, or like they had tried giving her incentives, but it never worked for some reason.
Sure.
And I think maybe that's, once again, it's just because the whole community was Afrikaans. Maybe this was a lady also staying in the Afrikaans community, and she didn't have like spoke Xhosa much, like didn't speak so much. Yeah.
So was she fluent in Afrikaans herself already?
I guess so. I presume so.
Okay.
Because my parents had to communicate with her. Maybe she spoke English, but I think that maybe she stayed for 2 or 3 years, I guess, and then I think she left.
Okay, well, it's interesting that your parents wanted that for you. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think the reason? Why would they want that?
I think maybe for some reason, like I think actually because my dad was really want us to learn, and I think it's be something in the lines of that. Maybe, as I've mentioned before, that he knows that there's a lot of value to learning another language in a country where people is a multilingual country. Maybe I'll ask him what exactly was the reason, but
Okay.
that's exactly no.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm always interested in the context in which someone was growing up and like the main people that shaped them. Because so often, that shapes your perspective on whether, well, for instance, is it even possible to learn an African language? Because some people don't have any models or anyone who's like them who has done that. And, in my case, that was the case. I literally didn't know anyone. Even though I had a great-grandfather who had been a missionary, a Scottish missionary, and he had learned, I think, Shona and Ndebele, and like, because he was ministering in areas within, well, then Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. And I didn't know about this as a child. In fact, I thought I was like no good at learning languages because my experience of learning Afrikaans was, quite bad at school. And I think, yeah, so anyway, I didn't have any models of learning something other than Afrikaans. And as a result of that, I also went to schools that didn't offer it as a subject. So it was never on my radar, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think for people where it is on their radar and they've seen, anyway, that's just my hypothesis that it opens up that possibility for them in their own lives compared to
Exactly.
someone who doesn't
Yeah.
have any exposure to that. Okay. So then, second year, you start learning using this Lumco self-instruction manual.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how did things develop from there?
I would say I did a lot of effort to engage with people who spoke Xhosa. So, and I always find the humor in that. I think sometimes when people try new languages, they're so self-conscious of people laughing at them.
Hmm.
Where I usually just try to make people laugh, and then you feel at ease, and then it's funny and everybody enjoys it. And so I had the instruction manual, which was very nice because it just gave me sort of a bit of a foundation with understanding like how the parts work, because it's really difficult if you just run into a conversation and you just hear a lot of sounds you don't even know, and to put it together. And I usually went to the book, maybe learned one or two phrases, and then I'd go and try them out, and then go back to the book and try them out, and then maybe I'd try to read a news article, and then I can't get anywhere. Then I go back to the book again, and then listen to a song, try to write down the lyrics of the song, sing the song. It was sort of a back and forth thing like that.
So, and this was all during your time at university?
Yes. I actually started singing one of those. I know you probably know the artist Zahara.
Hmm.
Yeah, she's like a guitarist and a vocalist. So I found the music appealing to me at the time. I could relate to it. It's a bit more on the western side of the spectrum. So, and it's sort of at a place where you can quite easily hear it, what she's saying. So that was also sort of a thing that helped me a little, like with my learning experience with music, because I also play music myself. So I could jam on it and sing it, and that helped me.
Okay, let's delve into that, because that's another thing that comes up often is people who learn also another African language have some kind of musical training or background, which I find interesting. So maybe you can just give me a brief sketch of your relationship to music then, particularly being able to play an instrument or sing or whatever.
Yeah. So I would say my father, he can't read like in a single note of music, but he plays from the ear. So learned guitar from him around primary school. Had did a little bit of formal training, like I think for 2 years or something like that in high school. And then afterwards I just started trying to play any song that I could think of, or any song that I like. And I think music was just a place for me where I could really, I don't know how to put it exactly, but if you can go for a walk, right, or it's like a hobby where you can really express yourself, and you can, I don't know, if you have this like passion and you can like live it out in some way or another, it does bring some sense of fulfillment or some sense of, and I think that's just my relationship with music was always, after you wrote your exams and you're tired, you can just go and play music and just, get your mind off everything and enjoy it. So that's how I would say my relationship with music sort of is. And I've always enjoyed like playing songs with other people.
Okay, jamming.
If I can, jamming, or at varsity, I would grab the guitar and get a few guys together and serenade, or we just sing late into the night and keep everybody awake and stuff like that. So I've always enjoyed the side of it and the expressive side of it, and the getting together side of what music creates.
And then, I mean, it's interesting when you say that your dad could play by ear. Would you say that you also kind of reached that stage and you're, just picking up a song and figuring it out? Or?
Yeah, I think I heavily rely upon that, because I'm not much better at reading music than him, actually. I've attempted it, which is interesting. I've really attempted it once or twice, but I think it's the way I learn. I don't know exactly, but I find it hard to go through the theory part systematically and then improve my skills systematically with my theory. I think it's maybe something similar in the way that I learn Xhosa. I can't just go and sit and read the book and then, okay, I've done this chapter now, I've ticked the boxes, and then go to the next one. I want to, like, I'm more like jumping backwards and forwards in a way. But I don't know. I don't like theory that much.
Okay. Okay, that's I'm keen to get more into, I guess, the way that you learn. But yeah, I find it interesting the kind of being able to listen. And do you think that your attentiveness to, I don't want to almost give you this idea that you wouldn't have independently of me. So, I mean, if you think it is a bit of a stretch, you can tell me. But do you think that when you listen to music, you're more attuned to sound, and you became more attuned to sound as you got used to like hearing so that you could figure out the chords or figure out the notes? And do you think that that transferred over to your hearing a new language, and particularly where there are, you know, certain sounds that you're unfamiliar with given your previous language exposure? Do you think there was anything there, like you picked it up a bit quicker because you could hear the melody of the words, as it were, and remember it maybe as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting statement. I won't exactly be able to say yes on that, like necessarily. I don't know. It could be. I think, but maybe the way that I was like learning music maybe developed the skill of, maybe it helped me develop the skill of learning something completely new without, although I did have like very basic musical training. I mean, there's a lot of people who have much higher musical training than I do, but they won't be able maybe to play from ear. So you develop your musical skills in a certain way. You learn in a certain way. I always learned from ear. That's the way I enjoy it most. I go sit and I play something, and I play it a little bit different, and I hear how it sounds, and then you repeat that until you get it, rather than learning it from like theoretically, and then, okay, I get it because I've sort of a different approach. And that may as well be a contributing factor, I guess.
So to dial into that then, when you have been learning Xhosa, like, have you found it quite easy to hear what people say and then reproduce it? So that's a more direct question compared, say, to other learners that you've encountered.
I think I like the interaction part. That's the way I learn new words, or I like to learn new words if I hear it from someone. But I wouldn't say I'm not necessarily that good at always like remembering it immediately. I wouldn't say that I'm like super good with that. But usually if I hear a new word, the best way for me was just to scribble it down on a piece of paper and then go over it over and over. I think that's more the way that I learn, is more by repetition, like by repeating it like a lot of times. If I think that's what I can comment on that.
Okay, cool. And interesting. That was a bit of a side path that I took us on there, but yeah. Okay, so you're at university, and then you obviously got up to a certain point. I mean, how would you describe, come the end of university, your proficiency or how much you knew in Xhosa? Like, how usable was it?
I would say very basic. I would say, I don't even know how to grade it, but not good. I could go to a Xhosa person and I could do a little bit of small chats, but it wouldn't be like a real conversation. It usually probably be the things that I already know. I'll just be able to communicate those things over and over again.
I see. Okay.
So
Okay.
not very, and it's a long time ago, to be honest. But I think, it's very difficult to say, actually, to be honest. That's a long time ago.
So then how did it progress forward? What happened?
Yeah, so after varsity, like during varsity, I started to know about the place called Zitulele. Then after like approaching the end of varsity, I had the desire to come to a place like a rural Xhosa place. And then I started researching, looking up places, and I remember, okay, I've been to Zitulele before, and that's how I ended up at an NGO in Zitulele. And I think that's where the the sort of the backboard, like the foundation that I've learned, sort of just the basics, like every little bit, obviously, when I got here, just helped it quite a bit, because here you are almost like saturated with Xhosa influences. As if you're in a city, it was a lot more difficult. You had to go out of your way to try and get someone who can help you, or whereas here everybody speaks Xhosa, and I think they,
So, and going there, how much was the motivation so that you can be in a place where you can learn more, or was it that was just part of it, and there was another main reason, which is maybe being involved and doing the specific work in the NGO? How much of your motivation was to be in a place where you can, be surrounded by Xhosa, like you were mentioning?
Yeah. Well, I would say that was probably one of the main goals, I would say. Otherwise, I would have, we specifically went to like Lele because there's because it's a Xhosa environment, right? So learning the language, I think learning the language it's a big benefit in a way as well. I think for me, it's not the only reason I came, or like the main reason. That at the end of the day, I've deeper convictions on me as a person living out a certain life, irrespective of like necessarily what you gain, right? So I still have to serve, or I have to in a community in a specific way, irrespective if I get to like learn language or not, right?
Okay.
So, but it was a big motivating factor that, if I get there, I'm sure this is going to be an environment where I'll be able to learn the language. Maybe if I stay only 1 year, already we learn a lot more than staying 1 year in a city, or 1 year in Lataland.
Sure.
Afrikaans.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think at that point, I thought maybe I'd go and stay in Zitulele for 2 years, 1 year, 2 years. And then I have a little bit of Xhosa, and when I go back wherever else, you're going to have a little bit of Xhosa up your sleeve. But yeah, I mean, then it didn't turn out that way. Still, yeah.
Still there, yeah. Okay. And I mean, I have no frame for knowing how far your Xhosa has developed or not. I'm not going to ask that question quite yet, but I'm curious. So maybe getting more to the way then that you committed your time to this, particularly once you reached Zitulele. Yeah, so how did you start learning once you arrived? And what were kind of the methods or the techniques that you used? I mean, you've already mentioned a bit. I suspect there's carryover. I mean, I know that you continued using the Lumko manual. But what was your approach once you arrived in Zitulele?
Hey, now we're going back to the time when we were staying together. Yeah. So I think at that time, I was bacheloring with another who was staying actually staying after we moved out of the student accommodation we were hosted at initially. We moved into a rondavels, and we had a very basic life, which is like, basically no electricity, no running water. It's just a normal rondavels, and the way everybody, or like a lot of people here, live and still. I think at that point, what we did a lot was when we came home at nights after work, we'd sit at our desk, and I'd go through the book, or maybe I think the same pattern that I've always maybe done. Like maybe I had a song that I was listening to, and I started like trying to decipher the lyrics, or I had a little storybook. Storybooks are the best. I think that's the, like, after physically speaking with someone and writing down the words, like children's storybooks are fantastic. I mean, that's just helps you to put the puzzles together a little bit. And then at evenings we'd be reading a little bit of books, and the method I found that worked very well for me. So I would like have a little bit of like a little scrap paper, and then I'd write down 5 or 6 or whatever words, and I put it in my pocket, and during the day I'll just like slip out the paper, quickly read a word, and then I'd tell someone along the road, hey, and then they would, oh, this is funny, okay, this is what it means, or you're doing it right or wrong. And that was sort of the method that I usually did. And then the interesting thing about the learning experience was that you go through seasons where you're like more intense about it and more focused, And then at some point you feel like, this is not working, you're not learning much, and then you get a little bit more demotivated and you start learning a little bit less, and then at some point you pick it up again and then you learn, and then it seems like gradually over a period of time you accumulate your language in a way. That's sort of the way I accumulated the language that I have available. Yeah, I was wondering if you're gonna give me a short Q&A like on, please translate these words for me.
No. I won't get you to jump through any hoops. Don't worry. I mean, I will ask if you have any kind of favorite sentences or phrases or proverbs, sayings, whatever. But we can get to that towards the end. But yeah, so, the way that you're describing learning from an outsider's perspective seems great for learning vocabulary, but doesn't seem great for learning how to stitch together sentences, to put those words together, unless you also were taking note of specific maybe particles or grammatical particles that you didn't really understood how they worked, and then you would ask people about that and then they give you feedback. So yeah, like how I can understand in terms of acquiring, but in terms of acquiring grammar, how did your method work, especially if you've maybe had a little bit from the Lumke manual where you'd have a bit of systematic grammar, but then how did you intuitively kind of get it in that kind of shotgun approach where you'd have your little piece of paper and take it out?
Yeah, so that's where Xhosa becomes a bit tricky, I think, compared maybe to other languages, because the textbook gives you a certain grammar that's outdated. So that's what I found with the textbook I had. So I write down something and go say it to a person. He's like, "What are you saying?" And I told him, "This is Xhosa. I got it out of a book, out of a textbook." And then the person would just look strangely at me. So I think what I've noticed is that hearing, even like, and I think specifically with Xhosa is, as you mentioned, like you get like particles or parts that get, for example, if you want to go into past tense, or if you want to go into this is a cat or this is a dog, then you have to use specific parts of the word. I don't know, so parts of whatever it is. But if you hear someone say that and you can write it down, then and you go and research, so you go and look on how does this work, then, and if you are able to even use it just for one specific way, it sort of helps to lay the foundation for this is how I can use it maybe for other in other ways as well. How would I maybe giving an example might be the best way. Let's say, for example, say Diamba, say for example I'm going, and then you have to say then Diamba, for example, is I think I was going, for example. So you hear someone, when you walk around, you hear they say the word ben, be, or be. You hear that sound all the time, and then when you actually write down, okay, this is what I've heard, and and then you go look up, you can see, okay, that part this is the meaning of that. So even just having one word, including that single grammar concept and repeating that's the way sort of the grammar, sort of the way I was able to cement it in a way.
Okay. And so did you mostly do it in that way when you had a need to express something, or you're hearing something that was starting to bug you, that you're like, hey, I need to figure out what that thing is? Or did you ever kind of, do a little bit of systematic study, like you mentioned in the evenings, opening the books, and that you would see things there that, you hadn't necessarily noticed when people were speaking yet, but then you're like, oh, that's useful for me. Let me try and practice that. So how much of it was all almost reactive to when you're hearing things that you want to know what it is versus proactive, like learn this thing, I want to now use it because it's going to be useful for me?
I would say it's it definitely cuts both ways. Right? It's not that I just get to one approach. I think that was where the Lumko instructor manual was super helpful, was that certain things you won't actually be able to hear it if you don't know it's there. Like certain sounds are so soft or so subtle that if you don't know, you should be listening for it. You would never pick it up. I mean, I won't be able to take away the help that a manual gives you. Just so that you know what to look for in a way. Otherwise, it's just a lot of sounds. But if you know the grammar and you know, like, okay, doesn't matter how the grammar came to you. Maybe the grammar came to you through hearing someone on the street saying something, and then you wrote it down, and then you went to look it up, or you maybe just look it up and then you start hearing it. It goes both ways.
Okay. Okay, interesting. And did you continue just using that one textbook, or did you have anything else? I mean, I know that you gave me I think it was an English dictionary, English Xhosa dictionary, but only from the English side. So you couldn't look up a Xhosa word. Did you use any other like media or resources which became quite central?
Yeah, definitely I think it's an Oxford school dictionary, English Xhosa. Yeah, that's the one. Super helpful. Yeah, no, I mean, dictionary is. I mean, sometimes I just sit and browse through the dictionary and look through the words, and then you stumble upon words and you say, okay, yeah, I mean, I've seen that a lot. I've heard that before, and I think that's where the immersion part becomes very important. If you don't immerse yourself, you're never gonna. Where you don't hear these sounds or these words, it will be very difficult to pick up a dictionary and see all these foreign strains and words. Whereas the immersion part, when you go to the dictionary, you say, okay, I've heard this before. It's much easier to remember. And I think in that way, you also you feel more encouraged. Like, oh, I've heard it before, and now I know what it means. So you encourage, and that sort of motivates you as well.
Further, okay.
And where just learning a whole dictionary without having that background is very difficult. Very not so motivating.
Okay. And then you also mentioned like children's books as well, which is interesting because some people, I mean, I found for myself I disliked it so much. But yeah, I mean that's interesting. So that clearly was a resource for you that was helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what nice about like a children's book, particularly if you're not too sorry for the book, is you can actually go and you can underline something that put out or make notes but something I think that I haven't mentioned, but I think was definitely also very important, was I had a good friend of mine who I sort of had an arranged meeting. And once again, as I said, there's periods of time when you put in more effort and periods where you put in less effort. So this would definitely be in a time where I put in a bit more effort. We would have weekly meetings, and I would sit down with her and say, listen, I'm reading this book. What does this and this and this mean? And this is my notes. I've written some stuff down. What does this and this and this mean? Or can you please explain me the grammar concept for this, or particular here? This word, I can't find this word in the dictionary. That's super frustrating. You hear something and you can't find it. So yeah, next time I'm gonna have to call you again, because I remember that dictionary, and I would be interested to see what the range of words is in that dictionary, because that's the one where the school dictionary is limited, and I think if you are in a more traditional Xhosa environment where people still use a lot of old words, it is challenging, because 50% of the words you use or you hear is not available or not listed in the book. It's an estimation now.
Well, I'll chat to you at the end, but I have another version of that dictionary that I managed to buy, which I'll send to you. You must just give me your address.
Right. Good to know.
Yeah, I mean, it's good if you want to write in Xhosa and you know what you want to say in English, or you know what words you want to use, because then it can give you very specific translations in Xhosa. But yeah, I mean, if you want to look up a Xhosa word that you've heard, it's not useful, unfortunately. Yeah, so it's useful for like becoming, I think, literate and good at writing. Yeah. Okay, so let me see. So we've spoken a bit about some of the media and the resources, and then now you've mentioned almost like a tutor or a teacher that you had a weekly session with. Were there any other people who were quite central to you, almost helping you, get from A to B while you were there in Zitulele, that you would almost pinpoint, like, yeah, they helped me a lot, And what was it about them that made them help you?
Okay, so my tutor, she's actually a friend of mine, so she helped a lot. My colleagues were definitely a big help because I would like speak with anyone, like or ask anyone that I, especially obviously the people who had a bit of English would be the people who bit more help. Of course, a person can't really explain Xhosa with you in Xhosa, if you don't understand Xhosa.
Yeah.
So, so that's quite critical. What stood out about these people would be, you get some people who are more open to sharing, and actually, not everybody is as good in grammar as everybody else. So I would say the people who helped me definitely had a bit of an understanding of Xhosa, because you can some words or like pronouns or things like that in Xhosa. If you ask a Xhosa person, you won't be able to tell you why it's being said the way it's being said. We just say that's just the way we speak. Whereas there are obviously reasons why you can break it down a little bit, but some people won't be able to explain it to you.
Mm.
So you need someone with actually like a little bit of understanding for language, or able to explain that. This is more with like the grammatical parts, I guess, more than both.
Okay. So just recapping then, you got to Zitulele, then you were doing that method of learning. How would you describe kind of the stages? And I mean, you also mentioned like, there's sometimes you put in a lot of effort and then less effort. How would you describe the stages over time from 2018 until, 2024, where we are now, where you kind of reached a certain level and were able to do things that prior to that you weren't able to
Yeah.
do? Like, how would you describe that trajectory? It's maybe a hard one.
I would say, I think for me, a big goal or a big place that I found like to be a big stepping stone. Maybe this is more of the end, levels, was to be able to have like to reason with someone about something, right? Because I would say the first step would probably be just have like basic words, have basic vocab, saying basic sentences, but not being able to respond. It would be like the entry, like first level, and then the secondary level, I guess, would be when people start asking you questions and you can respond to them. That's also a big like goal. And I say the way I practically was experienced was I was staying on a property of someone else's, and sometimes we had to have meetings. We had to discuss. Okay, where can we maybe build a house, or where can we build a fence here, or can we use this area? So you have these type of conversations, and once you be able to have these type of conversations about basic things, that was just another like stepping stone. Okay, we can actually communicate basic ideas, and we don't end up in conflict because we have misunderstood each other completely. Although that still happens. And then I think in my mind, sort of the higher level of being able to understand the language would be if you can have like if I think about a political debate, that would be like, okay, you've mastered the language now, because you can discuss, the laws of a country, or you can debate about, debate. That's sort of the level where you want to be, or one of the higher tiers or levels. So if that answers your question, and don't ask me to exactly rate myself on that. Yeah, one. I should get a friend here to come and vouch for Wade.
No, it's fine. I mean, I'm more interested indirectly and not with direct, I don't want you to have to perform or feel like you need to perform at all. But yeah, I mean, so where would you say you're comfortable now using it? Like you mentioned, political discussions like that, and reasoning, like, talking about the logic of something, which obviously you need to have quite a bit of almost meta vocabulary that allows you to negotiate around the meaning of words, and talk about different what is the term, connotations and meanings of words, and say, no, it's not that, it's this. And so you need like where would you say that you're most comfortable? Where you're least comfortable? What kind of conversations have you enjoyed the most that you weren't initially able to have? I'll stop asking questions now. I often ask a series. So yeah.
Uh, yeah, you say there's a couple of thoughts that come to mind. I think, when you can start your, yeah, maybe rephrase your question. You think about it again, because there's a lot of.
Okay. I'll try and do a bit simpler. What kind of conversations have you found yourself now having that you previously weren't able to have?
Okay. I think the conversations that I enjoy or that I found myself having is speaking to people about things that are right or wrong in a way. If I can put it very simply. So, for example, somebody would come to me with a request. For example, there's a guy that came to me with a request saying, "No, you want me to cut down a certain tree." Then but now the tree's not on my yard. I'm not staying on the yard. It has nothing to do with me, but the person is asking something from me. It's going to place a big responsibility on my shoulders. And like sometimes if you're rushed, you just want to say, "No, listen, I can't. Okay, yes, I'll do it." Okay. Then you end up causing yourself a lot of trouble, right? So people come with requests, and if you just either if you just say no, it's going to be very rude. You can't just say, "No, listen, no, I'm not going to help you." It's rude, especially in the context we are. So you have to answer the person. You have to give him clear reason why this is not, you're not going to do it, or why, and let him understand. And you have to be, and I think that's sort of the conversations that I find myself now having, which I wouldn't have been able to have a few years ago. And so you have to, and also when people start knowing, or when people know you can speak the language to a certain extent, people are comfortable to ask you things a lot more. They know he's going to understand. So then you have to be also willing to take more time to explain things, because you can't just say afterwards, "No, I didn't understand you." People are going to say, "Listen, but I don't buy that. You did understand. And you said this." And I'm also working with a group of Xhosa men, so there's a lot of times we have to speak about, okay, how's this team working together? What's acceptable at work and what's not? Who can be late, and what happens if you're late? That's sort of the reasoning part that I have to do. I guess I'm almost on a weekly, daily basis.
And is all of that taking place in Xhosa now?
Yeah, because I think there's two or three of them that can speak English, of the maybe group of 6, 7, 8 guys. And I mean, that's been going on since 2021, around 2020, where I've been working with guys. So yeah, I mean, if I haven't mentioned it clearly before, that's also a big contributing factor to my language learning. It's the fact that I'm working, I have to give orders and discuss what's going to happen.
Sure.
That helps a lot.
And also for context, I mean, you have an engineering background, is that right? As a builder.
Yeah, industrial engineering.
Yeah.
Which is actually quite far removed from practical building, but it does help a lot with the background stuff, admin and planning and things like that. But yeah, building and maintenance, sort of the profession that I'm in at the moment. I think that's also where I know that the guys that I'm working with will be able to be part of that team, because it's not a super. You don't even need a matric certificate to be able to build something.
Yeah.
You just need to be practically a bit more be able to work practically, right?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that is definitely an important element, I think, because that means pretty much on a day-to-day basis you are speaking in Xhosa and communicating all the time. I mean, obviously there may be quite specific vocabulary, but when it comes to negotiating, when things maybe go wrong and whose fault is it, and more sensitive kind of discussions, that's obviously the higher level stuff. That's like That kind of vocabulary. I mean, you can know the vocabulary for permission or respect or things like that, but it's one thing to know the vocab and another thing to actually have the competence being able to express respect indirectly through the words that you're using or whatever.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, I mean, how would you, just in general terms, then just rate your, are you comfortably fluent now, given the domains of using the language that you typically use it, like that?
Yeah.
How is it?
So I would be like, I would be able to, if I don't understand a word, I'm in a level where if I don't understand what you're saying, I can ask you to explain it to me differently. And then I would be able to understand. I won't necessarily be able to speak to the older men in the area, which is because they sometimes, I think they maybe partially because of the vocab, and also I don't think they also sometimes I found that they don't as easily explain in another way what they are trying to say. With the younger generation, maybe it is a little bit easier. Yeah. So in terms of rating myself, I guess maybe a 7. Because let's say 10 is you were born and raised, you're proper Xhosa, you have the accent, you know all the words. I think the part where I would lack would be understanding some of the phrases, some of the more metaphorical language part. Although I do have like a few up my sleeve, you do accumulate some sense of metaphorical speaking. But it would be difficult for me to sit in a conversation where other people are speaking in metaphors. I think people would be able to speak like over my head if they want to, if they speak in that way. But basic Xhosa is not a problem. So yeah, that's why I say maybe a 6 or a 7 out of 10. I think people, when they hear my accent, they think I can speak fluent. I think I've managed to grasp the accent relatively well. But I think the other part where I maybe be lacking would be, for example, if you want to tell something in parts, or if you are speaking about a specific noun group. I know you have specific pronoun groups, right?
Yeah.
So maybe if you're speaking about a horse and you're telling the same story as when you're speaking about a person, there's some things that would look a lot differently, like in terms of the way or the parts that you use. I think that's where I would be struggling. If I'll be able to tell a story maybe for a person, but if I have to speak about a horse doing the same thing the person was doing, maybe then I'll be having a bit of a harder time.
Yeah.
Just because I don't hear it that often. The way method I'm learning is more related to what I'm hearing.
Sure. Okay. So are you actively learning now, or it's more just passively picking up based on conversations? So you're not going at things systematic anymore.
Yeah, so things are at the moment are, you get work and you get hobbies, and then you should always know which one is more important.
Yeah.
Which one is more urgent? Or I think for me, work, I know enough, and my workers, the guys I work with, we can communicate like very clearly what needs to happen. I think there's seldomly that people misunderstand me, because also always they also know my limited vocab. They know how I use the words I do. Just so apart from that, actually trying out, one of my guys is actually Sotho, so I'm stepping into Sotho, but not seriously I would say, because I hear him speaking Sotho, so I'm just looking if there's any resemblance between the two languages.
Is that a hobby?
Yeah, it's more of another hobby, but at the moment not doing serious effort, I would say. I think it's because I've reached a stage where I can communicate well enough that seldom that I feel shucks, I really need to work on it now, otherwise it's gonna be a big problem for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're aiming for perfection or to get kind of that perfect deep Xhosa. at least at this stage in your life, given all your other responsibilities, it's more if it's functional and it works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say I think initially I was more striving for, perfecting in a way the course that I do have. But I think if you get right with what you have, a good like a good level, I would say, a acceptable level for me, then I think you don't have as I have that much motivation anymore to go like, because for what would I be doing that? Why would I be stretching myself further except if there's and I think that's where I've realized that a lot of the language, or in my case, is if I have a purpose for something, I would work harder on it. Right? It's almost like the use it or lose it thing. If you if you um if you don't intend on, for example, using your instrument to make music with other people, if there's no purpose for it, why are you going to learn it, right? In a way, for me, if I know I'm going to engage in a certain type of political or like high level of where more deeper course would be needed, I'm sure I'll be able to learn it, and especially on as you engage in those spheres. But the sphere where I'm at now, I would be learning. It would be a lot of hard work because I'm going to be learning something I'm not going to be using. So how do you push yourself for that? I think I found that, except if I maybe become part of the leadership in the community or something like that, there have to be more meetings. Then I'd tell myself, hey, listen, let me upgrade my course a little bit, because it's needed. So that's maybe a bit more. But sometimes I do just, sometimes I do pick up a book and where I have to stretch my course again. And I think that's also, there is for me a satisfaction in just learning for the sake of learning it. And it pays off like in your social interactions as well. It really does, but it's not as much of a focus for me.
Cool. So just moving kind of to the last part, because I'll try and wrap it pretty soon. Yeah, the social interactions. How's that been? How have you been received? So not so much when you started learning, either at varsity or when you first got to Zitulele, but now. Maybe also you've been there a long time. So, but yeah, how do people, particularly new people that you're interacting with that don't know you, how do they receive you when you're using Xhosa?
I would say it's like, when people's eyes light up, it's sometimes when you walk into a place and people don't know you and just start speaking, it's like you feel like you immediately have a friendship with someone in a way. You feel at ease. And I think sometimes it's like if you walk into a room with somebody who speaks your mother tongue, right? It's always feel at home, you feel comfortable. I think recently I had to go pay a fine ticket because I didn't wear my safety belt. So I guess it was a funny story because it was super hard to pay my fine. I don't know how they get other people to pay their fines. But I got there and they don't even have a card machine, eh? But I mean, I was sitting there for 20 minutes or so, just chatting away, and I think that was really, it's like special, you can engage and people enjoy it, and you enjoy it, and you get to know people a lot easier, a lot quicker than if you have to be speaking in English, with them in that sense. So generally people receive it well. I mean, you get the few odd cases where you greet someone in Xhosa at the fuel station or somewhere, and they were like, how are you, like, Unjani, and the person like, I'm fine, and you. They're like, just like, not keen for any interaction. So that happens, but I mean, it's it works. So, but in the community we stay at, it's very, very well received. I think it makes people a lot more comfortable and open, and it just creates sort of maybe a trust in a way as well. And I think that's something I've noticed, that when somebody speaks your language, you can see a lot of that person a lot easier. I know a certain type of Afrikaans I would associate with a certain type of person, because I know, for example, a person with a good upbringing won't be swearing, for example. That's a general, assumption, the general rule, you have in your mind. Whereas another person speaking a certain, like a more formal Afrikaans, I would be able to conclude like, oh, this person maybe went to varsity, or yeah, you grew up in this type of household, and you can it creates a certain sense of trust. And I think in the same way, if you speak also maybe in a certain way, people maybe are more easy to trust you, or to, because they can, I don't know, they can relate to it.
Do you think that goes both ways? So you find it easy to trust other people when you can engage with them in Xhosa, and then likewise they may be more receptive, find you more trustworthy?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I can, now that I know the language a lot better, I can also see, like, I can learn a little bit about a person in the way that he speaks, because I know from my reference, how does somebody I usually trust speak? How do they usually speak like? What are the way they speak like, or what's the way they speak like, or the words that they use? And it's sort of just bias. It's not always on. It's not like a foolproof thing. Generally, people who just use slang, or like use like totsital, they would say, you clearly easily like notice it, and it sort of gives you warnings, because some other people who've been speaking like that, what they're involved in, or so that's
Sure.
sort of maybe a side tangent on the conversation, but it's something that I think it's interesting from.
Yeah, no, definitely. So returning back to your initial motivations for, like, I guess, bridge building, if you were to reflect back on that now, given where you are with the language,
Yeah.
And your experiences with people, like, to what extent has it allowed you to build bridges, and almost not just build bridges and go somewhere, but also allow other people to come across the bridge to you?
Yeah. I mean, I think something I've always noticed around here is that there are a lot of outsiders, so white France or English people coming to Europe. Before learning a language, if you don't know Xhosa, you're gonna be limited to the people who you can communicate with, which would then be the either the English Xhosa people, or the English Afrikaans, or English white, yeah, people. Whereas if once you get the language, or your neighbors, otherwise you won't think about them. You think about your friends, or because you can associate with so much more people, or you can associate with the local people, which means that your community is much more stable. Whereas if you can't, then you'd always, if people come in or people go out, my community is changing the whole time. Whereas now we can communicate with our neighbors. We know a little bit about. We can go and sit with them and speak with them. And I mean, I think that's maybe quite a critical thing. If you want us to be staying in another community, and actually feel like you're part of that community, the language does have really built that cross that bridge. Because everybody is not it's no secret that we're not like Xhosa, but if you can, but the language does make, if you can go to any Xhosa event or any Xhosa thing, and you can be part of that, and people won't feel strange with you being around them. Like, yes, man, come on, you're part of the community.
Yes. So it's almost like language starts to fade into the background, because now you can just interact as a person with another person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't think about language as, Do you see people more for who they are today?
Yeah, which I guess, I mean, and certainly that applies across all languages and all languages that I learned. I mean, I certainly had a lot of, when I was growing up, assumptions and kind of stereotypes and just misunderstandings with white Afrikaner people. And yeah, I mean, I think, I really wish also that I'd learned more. And I did learn some. I didn't have a particularly great kind of Afrikaans education. But I mean, after getting to a higher level in it, just being able to communicate somewhat in Afrikaans, like, yeah, the language could fade away and be like, oh, okay, just interact as people. And okay. maybe one last question. So I did promise that I would ask you if you have any favorite proverbs or sayings and also that you'd like to share. I remember there was one when we were staying together. I think you were also involved in learning this. It's something like you wake up super early in the morning, so it's when the dogs are still brushing their teeth or gargling. I don't know if you remember
Mm.
that one. Ngenje ikuku.
Definitely don't
Okay,
know.
oh, you don't remember that one. That's one that I love from that time. But I mean, any favorites of yours?
Yeah, I'll give you some, but on the condition that you must share with me the other ones that you've collected so far, if that's a reasonable exchange.
Okay, well, I can give you one other. Oh, there's a few others, but to be honest, I don't really use them. I just know them, you know. But
Okay.
yours came, I think, from actual learning with people and interaction.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm. Okay, so the one that I've learned was it says inyaw anumpun. So it's basically saying inyaw, which is like feet. So it's basically saying your feet doesn't have a nose.
Mpundu,
So impundla,
mpumla.
yeah, impundla.
Yeah, because you know what a mpundu is.
Yeah. Sorry. Don't put that on, or you can put it on and then just laugh about it.
Yeah.
Just put like a bar in there, like correction, like.
No, all good.
And I think that came from, and I just because I remember the guy who said it, and the reason he said it was that it's basically saying that your feet doesn't know where you're gonna go. He doesn't have the ability to smell out your next step or smell out where you're going.
Hmm.
So, and you use that specifically in the context where if you have a stranger coming to you or somebody needs your help, that you treat that person well, because you don't know where you're going to be heading next and what could be when you're going to be needing someone's help. So that was a one that I particularly enjoyed. Then I think another one I think I've learned it, but then I've used it frequently. Other was that it says in global I yeah. When I have to think about the words, it's not as easy. In global I global I seen in Bogo why. It's basically saying for the elephant, his trunk is not heavy. Whenever, that's a fun one because whenever you are working and somebody's busy with work, you can just tell him that, basically saying the load of the weight of the trunk for an elephant is not heavy, whereas for someone else it would be heavy.
Yeah.
So basically saying your load, although it's heavy for you, it's suited, and you'll be able to carry this one.
Yeah.
That's another fun one. Yeah, there's maybe if you and then I have another one, but maybe this could be my finishing. The one that I used on my wife was doodlu. Like how many horns does a sheep have? And then the person is supposed to answer like two, and then your response would be yes, that's me and you. Yeah.
Nice. No, that's a nice one. Sure, that's cool. Thanks for listening to this episode of Learning South Africa's Languages. If you enjoyed what you heard, let us know in the comments section or via social media, and please share this with someone you know would be interested in it. If you know anyone who'd be a great guest, please reach out. You can also follow Language Learning SA, which publishes this podcast, on all the main social media sites. Our aim is to centralize information, media, and resources to help learners of South African languages. If you found resources, media, teachers, or schools, or something that helped you or somebody you know, let us know and we'll be sure to add it to our database. Thanks for listening.